Hello and welcome to the Rhetorical. On today's episode, I have author, speaker, documentary filmmaker, and enlightened hooligan, Philip McKernan. 10 years ago, he was an entrepreneur running a very successful coffee business. He decided to make a change and walk away from that life. He states he has spent most of his life pretending to be someone else. His journey over recent years is to take the masks off, stop acting, and get back to the core of who I am. A direct quote, his mission for the rest of his life is to take anyone who is willing and pull, kick, drag, coerce, hug the shit out of them if needs be, to bring their gift out, because by God, do we all have gifts. Philip McKernan, I am so thrilled to have you join me here. Thank you and welcome to my show.
Thank you. That was an interesting introduction. You've obviously done your research.
It's really fun just coming up with introductions for people, because in some ways it's kind of so easy because you can just, there's so much bio, but at the same time I'm just kind of like, how can I narrow this down into be something coherent and really get the essence of the guest? And your work has been so inspiring over the last couple of years, and I've seen you live as well, actually, at London Real. I've seen your videos, and so yeah, a true inspiration, and really excited to have you join me here.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. I appreciate the patience. I know we struggled to connect this morning a little bit overseas, but we're here, so I'm glad to be here. And anybody who ever wants to connect and have a conversation and hear what I have to share and hear some of the examples I've come across and some of the, not just even personal life experiences, but professionally what I see in the world. Anytime I have an opportunity to talk about that's a real honor.
Fantastic. Yeah, and you've always been very open about your just willingness to share and come on, and I'm really thrilled to have you here. Philip, I'm going to start because I start with this to all my guests, and I pretty got a good idea of what you're going to say to this based on what I know about you already, but I read two lines from the end of the poem Invictus by William Ernest Henley, which states, "I am the master of my fate, I am the captain of my soul." How do you resonate with that? How does that affect your life?
So obviously I'm not prepared for this, so which is great. It's exactly the way I want it, by the way. So I'm not. Can you read it one more time for me, if you don't mind, please?
For sure. Yeah, it's the two lines from the end of the poem, which are, "I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul."
Okay. So, I mean, it resonates at a level, because what it does is it emphasizes the importance and the reality that we are in not control, but we have tremendous influence over our own personal journeys. And I appreciate there's people who listen to this, there's people who are going to listen to this in the future that put people on pedestals, they put God on a pedestal, they have their own religions and everything else. And I say, great, have your religion if you want to, but don't over rely on it, because if we say things like, well, God willing, or, and I never speak about this because it's a very delicate subject, and a lot of people get very angry and very judgmental of this. But if we put everything over to somebody else, I think what happens is we become bystanders in our own lives, and we basically witness our life kind of passing by. And if we get success, well, we put it down to God. And if we have failure, we put it down to God. And that was, to me, it's about taking a lot more. And again, I'm always reluctant to use the word control. So to me, take grasp of it, if you like, and to influence your own life. As an individual, and craft your own life. The word master, I react a little bit to that emotionally. To me, it feels like controlling my own life, mastering. So mastery is something that a lot of people talk about. The concern with mastery is mastery almost implies perfection. Like, I'm going to master the game of snooker. I'm going to master the game of golf. I'm going to master the game of soccer. Good luck with that one. So I'm a little bit concerned about that, but ultimately I love the captain of my soul, and I absolutely believe that to my core. The mastering piece sometimes bleeds into control, and I really think control is something that a lot of us think we need, but it's an illusion that exists up in our brains, and it is an absolute illusion, because we're not in control of ultimately anything in our lives. And if we own that, we can have this gap between desiring something and not needing it, and not needing it to identify who we are as an individual. So you've got this beautiful space in the middle where you have a desire and intent, but you're not controlled by it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, for sure. And what I highlight from yourself is because you spoke about opportunity right at the start of this, and what I've seen you before as well is I think taking control of your life, but being open to opportunities. And as you've spoken so many times about, is just whenever if somebody wants to connect with you, you're so willing to want to share your message and connect that you're not actually planning where you're going in the next 5 years or 10 years. You're kind of just opening up to what opportunities come about. And I think
Yeah,
so. As you say, that mastery can become too limiting. It's like, I'm
exactly.
going this way, but there's a huge opportunity coming to you from this angle that you're ignoring because you can be so gung-ho going that way.
And
So,
even since you've heard me speak about that, I think I've even evolved further in that regard. And people often ask me, why did you move to America? So, in the last 12 months, we moved from Canada to the United States. And to me, people have often referred to the United States as the place of opportunity. I don't believe that anymore. I think there's opportunity everywhere. And particularly with the emergence of extraordinary technology such as this, you and I chatting in different parts of the world, there's obviously darkness outside your door right now. I'm
yeah.
sitting here. There's not a cloud in the sky here in Colorado. And it's extraordinary, but the challenge is that there's opportunity everywhere. To me, America, and it's not America's the only place. It's in Britain, it's in Ireland, it's in lots of places, but America still represents the place of possibility to me. So I'm very intrigued by this context of what's possible for my life, and particularly what's possible for my life that I cannot see. Because when we think about what's possible for the futures of our lives and even what exists today, we always look through it through the lens of what we already know. The second we do that, we limit ourselves. So if I'm sitting here going, well, I mean, where do I want to live? Well, I mean, I live in Colorado. I've got 2 kids. I got my wife, and I start bringing all of these elements into my life, which are all real. It limits how I think about the world. But if I can remove those emotionally, not physically get rid of my kids and my wife, but emotionally, and go, leave them aside for a moment. What's possible for me? And then I dream about that, and then I bring them back in. And I said to a group of people recently, for example, and some of them were using their kids as a reason or an excuse not to grow. Well, I take that risk, but my kids. I take that risk, but what about school? I take that risk, but... And I say, okay, great. If you're going to use your kids as an excuse not to grow and not to step out and do what you want to do, that's fine. But just let them know. Just take them aside and sit down and say, hey, little Johnny, just so you know, Dad's not going to do this, and he's going to stay miserable in a job he doesn't like, or he's not going to go after his dreams. And I'm using you as a reason for that. I just want to let you know. And some of them reacted a bit angrily, and they felt I was judging them, which was not my intent. What I was trying to do is waken them to the fact that we often use excuses that are not real.
Yeah.
We think they're real, but they're not. So to me, I think what's possible for my life outside of what I know, outside of what I have learned, outside of who I have become, outside of my environment, what's possible? I love those words because they stir something deep inside of me.
Yeah, great. That's fascinating insight as well, because what's possible outside of the roles, we're very quick to put ourselves into roles or boxes of mother or father or this and that. And then you kind of, well, this is who I am in this role, but who are you as a because people forget to do that. And this is something that I'm looking in as myself. Philip, can we just go back to just, I guess, to the start of this? Are we calling it a journey? Or, I mean, because you were definitely on the path of, I'm going to say, external success, if that's okay to say. You were trying to do the entrepreneur thing, the business was going very well, and you kind of had to wake up to be like, what I'm chasing here is not who I am, and I need to kind of make some changes. Can you just give me a quick rundown of that?
Yeah, I don't know if I have a rundown. I don't know if I have a kind of a very clear and concise context for that, but I think I believe I was in Ireland. I was in the coffee business with my brother, who was kind of ultimately owned the business, and I was coming in. I was running all the sales side of it, etc. And we were building a business. I was a part owner in the business, and I was making good money, building equity in a business, and that was the beginning of realizing that actually, there was just, I don't even remember a specific day where I woke up and felt it. It kind of caught up on me over a period of time. And the one thing that a lot of people do is they get overridden by their brain. Their brain can rationalize and justify pretty much anything. And we can tell ourselves a story that doesn't necessarily exist. For example, the science that is coming out around this about how we lie to ourselves, which sounds very judgmental, but how we tell ourselves white lies or how we tell ourselves a reality that doesn't exist. And I was a classic at that. I was brilliant at that. I probably still do it. I probably still tell myself a story that doesn't fully exist. And I was telling myself that, no, I was building something. And I knew deep down there was something missing in my life. I knew there was a lack of fulfillment. I knew that there was something inside of me that wasn't getting oxygen. And the story I told myself was such a classic, brilliant, cliche story to not address it was, well, I'll come back to that. I'll come back to that little voice when I make enough money, when I have financial freedom, when I'm stable, and then I can dream, and when you think about dreaming, when people say, oh, they're such a dreamer, it's such a derogatory term typically, but dreaming and creativity is something that I think is so underplayed in society. So I think it caught up over a period of time. But the one thing I will say that I'm very proud of is I did take a step back and I stopped and I engaged a coach to basically challenge me on how happy I really was. I mean, that wasn't my remit. I didn't go in and say, hey, expose my happiness or my fulfillment. I was going in to better myself. What turned out was I realized how unhappy I truly was. And what I did, like a lot of people did, I just got busy. So as I started to feel that disconnectedness, rather than address it now, whenever that time was, whatever that age was, I just got busier. And what busyness does is it prevents us from having to address a disconnectedness or misalignment in our life. The problem is you can't be busy forever. So it will eventually catch up with you. The end result, typically with people who are unwilling to stop and face the music, face the realities, sometimes it's subtle, sometimes it's significant, is they end up dying on their deathbed with tremendous regrets. And I remember stopping and realizing that actually that's the path I was on. I did not know what to do. I was scared shitless. And the devil you know versus the devil you don't, is more easier sometimes just to live with the disconnectedness, the pain that you already know, as opposed to uncover more. It got to a point where that just wasn't true anymore for me. I realized I was not living authentically. I was faking it. I cared so deeply what other people thought. I wanted to be seen as being successful. And deep down, when the lights went off and I lay in bed on my own at night, I was lonely as fuck. And you know what? I stopped and made a change. And that's the work that I do for as many people as I can from now to the day I die.
Yeah, and I can relate to that totally because so many people can, because busyness is almost a badge of honor now. It's like, I'm busy, maybe not even being very productive, but you're busy and you haven't, it's just another way to avoid something, being lonely or being unhappy or not having something in your life, but so many people, like in the same way, it's like lack of sleep. Yeah, I only get 3 hours sleep because I'm so busy, and it's people do that. And that's fascinating. So I like how you use masks, because the tagline for this podcast is the man behind the mask. And so when you're saying it's time to take the mask off, stop acting and just be real, that really resonates, because I'm trying to take my masks off. I'm trying to be like, all right, who am I? And so I can really relate to what you're saying. So what is it about masks and personas that people feel that they must present to the world?
Yeah, well, I mean, if it's any consolation, I'm still removing my masks, and I'll be doing it till the day I die. The goal is never to remove all of them, because that's back to this sense of mastery or perfection. And mastery and perfection doesn't necessarily correlate exactly the same, but sometimes people think it is perfection. So to me, the goal is never to remove all my masks. And some people might say, well, that's a very that's a kind of a negative. You're almost kind of setting yourself up for failure. To me, there's the amount of people that I meet who tell me how self-aware they are, and how how many masks are, how they're so happy now they've removed all their masks, and to me they've just become very complacent and they've lost that awareness. Is a gift where you can stay grounded, knowing that yes, I've removed a lot of them and I'm still removing some, and I'll never remove them all, but that doesn't mean I shouldn't keep trying. So for me, the layers of mask were enormous. I mean, and they were so, one was like a metal mask, like you see in a horror movie or something. It was bolted onto my face. And it was this perception that every time I left my front door, I had to try and be something I wasn't. And, why was to mask my insecurities. I didn't want to be seen. I didn't think I was good enough. So therefore I had to be somebody else who would want to listen to me. I think most people in society walk around, wearing a mask of sorts, and different layers of masks. I think it comes down to we so desperately care what other people think about us. The reason for that is because we haven't fully stopped and recognized our own individual stories. We haven't accepted our own individual stories. So if you think about your story as a 20-chapter book, and you're 10 chapters in, you're halfway through your life, if you think about it like that, most of us would look back over the last 10 chapters and say, chapter 1, 2, and 3, can't even remember them. Chapter 4, 5, 6, yeah, okay. 7 and 8, now I don't want those chapters. No, I don't want those chapters. I want Ian's 7 and 8. I don't want my 7 and 8. And 9 and 10, they were okay. And I'm hoping that 12, 13, and 14 are going to be great. The problem is that those 2 chapters, which represent 3, 4, 5 years of your life, where that pain was, where that disconnectedness is probably the greatest insight into who you are. It will give you such the greatest sense of growth when you can understand what really went down over those periods of time. What was the pattern that emerged? So for me, it's my journey has really been about accepting who I am, warts and all. And as corny as cliche is, starting to really accept that and to find a degree of compassion for myself that never existed. I mean, we're so hard on ourselves in the world today. A lot of the coaching clients that I work with, initially when I talk to them, if I could just record how they speak about themselves, the disdain, the expectations, not being good enough, not doing enough, and if I could play it back to them a year later or 6 months later and say, they'd be going, who is that? How did I hold myself with such dislike? And then we wonder why we're not successful, and we wonder why we're not enough. And now it's now prevalent in social media. Now we're all pretending to be something on Facebook that we're not. Yeah. And I do the same thing. I'm not saying, I'm not pointing the finger. I still do the same fucking thing. It's just so ingrained, and our idols and our heroes are perfect. Because the example I use is Wayne Rooney. I mean, I don't know if you're a soccer fan, whether you're into United, it doesn't matter. And Wayne Rooney gets a lot of stake in the press both in the UK and around the world and everything else. But Wayne Rooney is an incredibly talented individual. And my kid, I'm a Man United supporter historically. I know that'll probably insult lots. And my little guy looks up to Wayne Rooney. Now, he doesn't idolize him because he doesn't have posters of him, but he looks up to him. But if you think about and I was using Wayne Rooney as an example, Richard Branson, anybody. What we typically read about them and we see about them is all the forward-facing successes. The goals, the adulation, the fans wearing their jerseys with their name on it, the car he drives, the girls he's with, whatever those things, typical things are. And kids are then looking up to this idol called Wayne Rooney and replace his name with anybody, and they go, God, I want that. And I think what's going to emerge, and it's already started, is the emergence of someone like Wayne Rooney finally turning around to society and saying, guys, it's not that cool being me. Elon Musk said recently publicly, a kid says, how can I help my kid become like Elon Musk? And he says, no, it's not really great being Elon Musk. It's not as great as you might think. And it's not, sometimes I don't even like it. And what's emerging is this absolute human need to be vulnerable and letting people know both sides of the coin. I'm not asking Wayne Rooney to talk about how deeply depressed he is or the fact that he hates the success or anything else, but just give us an insight. So my child can look at both sides of the coin and then choose if that's the thing he wants to go after. Yeah. If Wayne Rooney and anybody associated like with fame and in the public, in the public domain, have the courage to share both sides of the coin, not just the successes, fans won't just adore them anymore; they'll fall in love with them.
Yeah. It's really interesting because, I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, social media and all of this kind of lifestyle and entrepreneur success and passive income and all of these things that we're supposed to get now, the big house and the women and the cars, and it's kind of like people still feel they need to experience it for themselves before they can say, yeah, actually, I don't need that. Because I find there's successful business people that I look up to, and they're very insightful, amazing wisdom that they're sharing. And they might be saying, you don't need to go to college, you don't need to go to Harvard, or you don't need to go to Stanford or something, because this is what you need to do. And yet they all went to Harvard and Stanford. So it's kind of like you could say that now that it wasn't valuable to you. You don't need that degree, or you didn't get as much from it as, say, the experience of doing the job. But it's very difficult for you to say you did the path, to do the path without the experience that you did. So there's that other side of it where I'm thinking, yeah, you're giving that insight, but you still went and got the £100,000 degree or MBA or something. So it is fascinating, but you're absolutely right in terms of people are just portraying like a fake life online on social media, and we're supposed to be wrapped up in the celebrity, in the fame, in the big houses and all of that external stuff. And as you just described in your journey, you were successful, not Wayne Rooney level, but you were still going home and feeling like crap, feeling lonely, feeling this, not feeling depressed. And so where do we wake up? Where do we go, okay, time to kind of figure out what it is that I want? Because we can be our own worst enemy and just be like putting ourselves down or just being busy. Where do we start taking some direction?
Yeah, it's a great question. Just purely on, by the way, my view, and I don't want to deviate too much, but on education is, I think education is important. I'm completely uneducated in the traditional sense. I don't believe people should necessarily go to college. I think go to college if that's what you want. Don't go to college because you feel you need to be educated in order to be successful. I think that's different. I think one is a desire to do it. The other one is you feel you have to in order to do something. Now it's different when it comes to medical or medicine and stuff like that. It's different. But for me, I think the majority of people wake up when the pain is significant enough. I mean, I think you probably have heard the story of the dog with the nail. I'm sure there's different variations of it. Two old guys sitting on a porch. One guy's a visitor. And they sitting down, they're having a beer, and the owner of this little cabin, his dog walks up the steps, curls up in a little ball, and sits down on an exposed nail. And the visitor looks at his friend and says, "Your dog's on a nail." And he goes, "Yeah." And he keeps drinking his beer, looking out over the land, and he goes, "Are you not gonna do anything about it?" He says, "Oh, he'll move." And the guy says, "When?" He says, "When the pain is bad enough."
Yeah.
So the unfortunate reality with human nature is that we won't typically respond until the pain is significant enough. And that's an unfortunate reality. My job is, can we be more proactive? So for example, you're sitting here today, you're listening to this and you're going, yeah, okay, I get some of it. I know a friend, John, and my friend, John, I got to forward this podcast interview to him because when he hears this, he's going to realize how unhappy he is. And I hear that all the time. God, if this guy McKernan, if I could get him to work with my wife, if I could get him to work with my business partner, if I could get him to work with my brother, Jesus, I'd lock McKernan and my brother in a room for a week. And I think my brother would be fixed after that. But what if we looked internally and we said, well, what if I'm not as happy as I tell myself? What if I'm not? What if I'm lying to myself? And lying again is a judgmental word, but what if I'm not quite as happy as I think? What if we were to be curious without the judgment of our own existence? And we started to really look at that. I think that's a very proactive approach. The challenge is that most people don't do that. And I have a vision someday I'm going to write a book about, it's going to be called Wake Up Call. And the basic premise of it, so none of your audience have to ever buy it because I'll tell you the beginning, the middle, and the end right now.
Okay.
I interview people who have had a significant wake-up call, whether it's health, whether it's depression, whether it's death close to them, somebody's died, or they've really come close to dying themselves. And the whole premise of it would be interview them beforehand. What was their life like? And to some extent, you'll find that there's areas where they realize now, looking back, they were floating and they weren't taking an influence in their life. They were allowing it to unfold. What happened? A helicopter crash, a car crash, a bike, whatever, depression, my mother died, my husband died, whatever it happens to be. That's the wake-up call and what they did differently afterwards. And what you'll find is for the people that changed and pivoted, what you'll find is on a very basic human level, they simply gave themselves permission to do the shit they've always wanted to do in their souls.
Yeah.
That's it. And it's not one person I've met who's had a wake-up call decides to stop work and go and live on a beach and just basically fish every day. Every single one of them have decided to do something that has a greater meaning and depth to the people around them, themselves, or society as a whole. In other words, giving back in some capacity. And that's the premise of the work. So what it does, it illustrates that unfortunately we wait too late. And late is better than never. But unfortunately, we wait way too long in order to make a real assessment of our life and pivot accordingly and make some changes.
Yeah, so this could be something, someone who became a lawyer because their parents wanted them to be a lawyer and they hated it, but their actual dream was to open a flower shop or something, so they're kind of
Exactly.
like gone, screw this. I've been doing 30 years of being a lawyer. It's actually what I should have done was what I wanted to do. Because again, it's people pleasing, or it's expectations, or it's not living your core values. You're living your parents' core values, or you're living
Yeah.
somebody else's core values.
And the starting is not, let's just use that example. And I say this very respectfully, but sometimes we use extremes to make a point, and you're absolutely right. I do exactly the same. We go lawyer, flower shop, and then people, kind of roll their eyes to that and they say, well, Jesus, I'm not going to open a flower shop, but maybe that's ultimately their desire. But maybe it's a business, or maybe it's something else where the flower shop is over here. But ultimately, often it's that extreme, the difference. Well, secretly, I've always wanted to do something that they're almost judgmental of its stupidity or the ease. Well, I can't be seen doing that. I'm a lawyer, for example. But the starting point is, I often have people say, and with their arms crossed like this, and they go, okay, I'm a lawyer, and let's just assume I'm unhappy. How do I open the flower shop? What's the transition? Tell me. Now, listen to the attitude, listen to the tonality.
Yeah.
They're not ready. It's like an alcoholic saying to me, okay, my wife said to me, I'm an alcoholic. She says I'm an alcoholic. So anyway, do your magic, do your shit, McKernan. What would you do with me? And I go, are you an alcoholic? And they go, well, I mean, everyone thinks I am, but I'm not sure I am. There's the door, out you go. And come back when you believe you're an alcoholic and you really need to change. So for me, the starting point is just simply recognizing that actually being a lawyer is out of alignment. It's costing you in ways you cannot fathom. That's the big thing. People go, well, actually, it pays the bills and it's great money, but I could open a flower shop on the side and put my friend John in there to run the flower shop, and I could go in on a Saturday and Sunday and still get the same joy. Actually, this is really important. Actually, this is just coming up. That's the critical mistake we make. We think that we can go to a job for 8 hours a day and it actually has a minimal impact on our life because we balance that out with what we do at the weekends and what we do that night. Bullshit. You cannot spend 8 hours a day doing something other than sleep that is out of alignment, that is sucking your soul, and not have a detrimental cost. But here's the challenge. We're unaware of that cost. I was on the phone to a lady yesterday that suffered from just severe depression after 2 years working in industry, that she made lots of money. And she finally said to me, it didn't dawn on me that actually I was out of alignment in my work. I was out of alignment. I didn't even like the people I worked with. I didn't trust the industry. I didn't even like the product we were selling. And the cost, she became then aware of the mental cost. It then manifested itself physically over a period of time. I said, what about the emotional cost? She goes, what do you mean? She was oblivious to the emotional cost. So we have this perception that we can go and work 7 hours, 8 hours a day in a job, in a business, and we can get by because, you know what, our kids are in private school and my wife has the new car, my husband has the new car, vice versa. And we rationalize and justify that it's okay. And what we're doing is torturing ourselves every single day. And then we use things like, and I say this very respectfully, we say things like, well, it's all I know. And I don't know what else I do. So I'm going to remain being a lawyer. And I find, and again, through the coaching that I do, I have found that actually that's not true. That we all know what it is. We're just afraid to get to it.
Yeah. And it's funny you say we're afraid. Fear is just, we're our own worst enemies, because something that's come up for me, I mean, I've been afraid of doing a podcast. I've been afraid of, connecting in this kind of way, but there's also the fear of success. That's come up for me recently. What if everything I wanted came true? And I'm like, holy shit, that's more scary than not doing it. So fear is on both sides. It's not doing it. It's also, what if it actually comes true?
Yeah.
And I think sometimes people can be so afraid of as you keep carrying on with the lawyer thing, stop being a lawyer, because what if they actually get it? Who are they? You can kind of be addicted to pain, or be addicted to feeling pessimistic and down and whatever. And you kind of like, I had an interview a couple of weeks ago, and he was telling me that he had depression, and when he went to see a therapist, and she said, or a therapist or a hypnotist, I can't quite remember, but she was saying, well, we can sort this out in a very short time. And he got really angry. And I can relate, because it's almost like taking away that identity. It's like, who are you without your depression? Who are you if you take that part of you away? So this fear of success is just as important. So where does that come from? Why are we putting?
I'm not sure I fully know, but I do have a theory. And the theory is that if you think about it, that it's okay failing doing the shit that you don't want to do. So if I get fired as a lawyer, if I lose a massive case, if I have some public scandal, if I make a mistake, deep down emotionally, we can protect ourselves by saying, well, I always wanted to open a flower shop. It was never really what I wanted to do. So you know what? I was kind of we don't use that language, but I was destined to fail. We can kind of chalk it down to that. But what happens if I open a flower shop and it's truly what I believe in my core I want to do? What happens if that fails? There's nothing left. There's nothing left. There's nothing but a big black void. That's the perception that people have. I believe when you connect to what you're meant to do, and I don't give a shit if people think this is corny, because I've been too apologetic about this. I believe when you truly align to what you're meant to do, you cannot fail doing it. Now, it depends what our benchmarks for success is. Well, if it's making $4 million doing it, can you fail? Well, yeah, but you've now just put an unrealistic expectation and you've attached it to your joy. Like musicians say, well, I'm not really a musician because I never got paid to do it. And I go, oh, so now you have to get paid to be a musician? I didn't realize that. If you want to do it full time, of course, you need to drive revenue from it. So to me, there's this real, and again, going back to your point, I think it's a brilliant point. I spoke to a lady recently. It was in Peru. I ran a retreat there. And I met this lady and we were chatting, and she was like desperate to talk about her, this abusive situation she came from. She was holding on to this story. And I said to her, by the way, what do you do? She says, I'm a counselor. And she kind of rolled her eyes in this kind of ironic, attitude. Like, isn't it ironic? I'm a counselor and yet I can't get over my own story. And I said, are you good? She goes, yeah, I'm very good. I said, how is this story affecting your ability to be even better? She said, it's affecting it a lot. I said, what if you're just holding on to this pain in this story so you don't have to be absolutely extraordinary at being a counselor? And I literally, I shit you not, I promise you, she literally went from being open on the negative stuff and the sexual abuse and all this. And I don't mean to diminish it. It's significant, but she's been holding on to this for about 8 or 9 years of therapy and so on. And when I start talking about her gift and her ability to move the needle for other people, her whole body contorted and twisted and turned, and she kind of almost moved away from me. And I looked at her and I said, look at your body. You almost feel like dying when I talk about your gift, but when I talk about your pain, you're going, come on, Philip, let's go, buddy.
Yeah.
And she looked at me, she goes, oh my God, really? And I said, yeah. I said, you're beyond your pain. You're just still holding on to it. Or your pain will never go away, because that kind of level of pain will never fully go away, nor should that be the objective. But what you can do is get to a point where it doesn't grip you and hold you down anymore. I said, you're beyond that point. And yet you refuse to take the backpack off with all the shit aside and put it down and say, you do not own me anymore. And I'm telling you one thing, she's had 7 years of therapy, and in 15 minutes, we got to the core of what was going on for her.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm still learning it. I'm still coming to terms with a lot of things, but it is that slowly, that is letting go. It's that letting go of things that is really empowering.
Well, also even on a very basic level, and this is where it gets for some a little bit woo-woo, but does that lawyer honestly feel that he deserves or she deserves to have a flower shop? And is that enough? And to me, that is the greatest, like when you go right to the core of it, I think it's about deserving. It's about value. It's about self-worth. It's about your ability to actually believe and to allow yourself to be loved, to be successful doing what you want to do, to give yourself permission to do the things in life that you truly want to do. And I'm not talking about money here. I'm talking about really giving yourself permission. But if you don't like who you are, you're never going to give yourself permission. What is going on at the core of every single individual I've ever worked with, billionaire, Olympic athlete, people in the Pentagon, leaders, CEOs, entrepreneurs, people who have no money, people who are trying to make money, couples, children, young adults, teenagers who I've worked with, thousands of teenagers. What's really at the core is they don't feel that they deserve. a wonderful life, a pain-free life, a successful life, whatever that is for them. They don't really feel they deserve that. So we give ourselves, and I have a saying or quote, we give ourselves what we feel we deserve. So at some level, if you have disconnectedness in your life, you're playing a huge part in that. And some level, deep down, whether you like it or not, you feel that that's what you deserve. And it's not about blame. It's not about judgment, because where there's judgment, there's no growth. There's never growth where there's judgment. It's about being curious about, I say I want to make more money and I want to be a millionaire, but do I actually act like that? Or is there some part of me that doesn't want the money I say I want? What if there's a sense of sabotage that lies deeper, and a pattern that you are not aware of, that you have from a very young age, that's playing out in every single business deal and conversation that you have, and you're oblivious to it? I have literally proved to people that they hate money. And yet they hated me first because they were arguing with me, and they hated me for it. They were going, you're ludicrous. You're mental, McKernan. You're off your rocker. To find out an hour later, they're going, oh my God, I can't believe this. I've been walking around for 40 years with this deep resentment towards money, and I didn't even know it existed. I didn't even know it existed.
So it's almost, so it's like, so you want the million, but deep down, you don't deserve it. You feel you don't deserve it.
Yeah.
For that success.
So I'll give you a visual example of this. So let's just say I have a vision board. So a vision board, for those who don't know, is basically a visual representation of the things that you desire in your life. So let's just say it's a car. Let's just say it's happiness. Let's just say it's a relationship. And you literally have photographs of a man and a woman, or two men, two women, whatever the situation is. You've got your helicopter, whatever the things you want, both as extrinsic and intrinsic things, that happiness, etc. Vision boards typically hold things that are extrinsic, like external kind of, societal benchmarks of success, typically boats or whatever. Let's just say you sit up in your bed in the morning, your alarm goes off. If you use an alarm, you swing around, your legs, your feet hit the carpet, they hit the tile, they hit the wooden floor, they hit the carpet, whatever it happens to be. And the first thing you see every single morning is your vision board. And you literally place it next to your bed. So you wake up every morning, you go to sleep every night. The last thing you look at is your vision board. And lots of people adhere to this and believe in this. And it's all about visualization. Leaving aside the fact that of the authenticity associated, like authentically, is that really aligned to who you are? That's a separate conversation for a different day. And I find 99.9% of the time, those goals and aspirations are not fully aligned to the person who wishes them. But let's leave that aside. So you look at the vision board and you go, that's what I want, buddy. That's what I'm going to do. So everything I do, from the minute I step out of this bed to the minute I step back into this bed tonight, I'm going to move towards these things. You get up, you go, you get showered, you get changed, you go to the gym, whatever you do. But every step you take, what you're doing is you're seeking to validate how you feel, not what you think. So there'll be a conflict. And this is where people sabotage themselves, or they're confused because they think they want one thing, but they feel something else, or they act in a way that is incongruent to the goals they say they want. So we get up thinking we want one thing, but we act in a different way. And most of the time, we don't even know that we're acting that way. So we go into a business deal. We want $1 million deal. We walk into the business meeting, or 10,000, doesn't matter. The numbers I'm just making up just to make a point. But at some level, we almost push the money away. Because we don't feel deep down we deserve it. And the best way to illustrate this is if somebody who's overweight or underweight, and you tell them 1,000 times they're beautiful and they're not overweight, doesn't matter. When they wake up, they might feel overweight. So that's their truth. That's what they hold on to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that making some sense, Ian?
Absolutely. Yeah. Definitely. And you're absolutely right, because I mean, I can totally relate to that. And I just think when it's that incongruence that you talk about, and that deserving, limiting beliefs, we're just putting limiting beliefs on ourselves. So where does this, how do we have success and the gifts that you talk about because we can all go and be in a band and not make any money and just be kind of, play guitar. And that may be what our passion is. That may be what we think our gift is. But is that giving value to the world? And there's no point being, busking on the streets with no money either. So how do we become more congruent to this gift, this passion, and this well-being, and still get the success that we feel we deserve?
So, and a good example of that would be a gentleman called Drew, who I worked with a number of years ago. And Drew basically was building an investment portfolio, primarily around real estate. And his goal was to build enough wealth so then he could spend more time doing his music. Okay. And I challenged him around the direction that he was going, and ultimately his why, his deep why behind it. And he had this wonderful rationale. He was going to build this portfolio, and then he'd have enough cash flow and residual income that he could go and then spend all this time doing music. And I said, great, cool. But I said, what kind of music? I didn't realize you were a musician. And when he started, he was getting very defensive, and he was rolling, retorting and just kind of pulling back. And I said to him, let's talk about music. And he said, listen, Philip, I really don't want to talk too much about music. And by the way, just to be clear, it's a really small niche of electronic music and a particular software that you use to create this music. So I know where you're going, Philip, because I know you and I've heard about you, but he said, I know you're going to go and see if I can make money doing this. And trust me, I've looked at every single avenue. And there's not enough budgets in these concerts. I get paid a minimal amount. There's not enough money for me to go on the road and play electronic music, even though that's what I'd love to do. I said, great. So let's keep talking about it, much to his annoyance. So I dug and we dug and we dug. The problem was his attachment to the story. So I said, Drew, all I'm asking you to do, I'm not asking you to give up your investment company. I'm asking you to set it aside emotionally and just have a free conversation so you never have to regret this in your life. You never look back in 10 years from now and say, shit, what if I just kept going with the music? What if I just pursued it? What if I just pushed through that difficult time I had? And he eventually trusted me enough. He let it go. He didn't stop the business. He kept moving in it. He just put it aside emotionally. And we dreamed and we planned and we wondered. Just for a small time. We're not talking about like 2 years. We're just talking about like 2 days every quarter or whatever it was. And suddenly he saw something emerge, a possibility emerge in the context of music that he never saw before because he was blinded to it.
Yeah.
He ended up creating an academy that teaches people how to create electronic music. He is now probably the biggest academy in North America. He's got the biggest YouTube channel, I believe, in the world in the context of this particular music. He never imagined, he never even thought about what kind of joy would I get and revenue could I get from teaching people how to do it. And now he has this revenue coming in, doing something that he enjoys. And now he goes to these concerts and doesn't need to get paid to play in these concerts, which is his joy. But now he's getting paid anyway because he's such a big name in the industry.
Right, yeah.
I'm not saying every musician that's busking in London, on the streets of London, can make it big in certain areas. I'm not saying that. But is the story they're telling themselves, no, this is my passion. This is why I'm busking. I worked in a pharmacy before. I hated it. This is my passion. Is it their passion, really? We're too quick to tell ourselves that's our passion. My experience is often it's not their passion. They have a dream or an aspiration that sometimes lies even further outside of their field that they haven't fully accepted or realized or even imagined because they've told themselves they're not qualified.
Yeah.
I don't have a letter after my name, so I can't do X.
Yeah. Well, I had that with this podcast because I wanted to interview psychologists and therapists and people such as yourself. And I was like, I don't know if I can talk about that. I wanted to have the discussion, but I'm like, I don't have the qualification to be able to talk about depression or this and that and this. And I put so many rules on it. But then I was like, no, I'm not going to say the answers. I'm just going to ask the questions. So you can just suddenly put limits on everything. And
Totally.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. So we become attached to the story. We become attached to the script. And so we think one thing is going to be, okay, this is actually my passion, but it actually could be something even behind that. So
Totally. I mean, I have business owners. I work a lot with entrepreneurs and business owners. So I have business owners all the time going, yeah, my issue is X, which is almost 99% of the time it's not. And because I love what I do professionally. And I go, great. So you love what you do. So now you're attaching a word called love to what you do professionally. Well, what do you do? I make plastic widgets that go in buildings or something. I don't know, whatever it is. And I go, so you love that? No, well, I love the interaction with the people. I go, so you love the people? Well, no, I love the art of the deal. Or I love the interaction. So what do you love? The money? No, not really. No, I love that connection. So you love connection. What kind of connection? See where we're going with this? What kind of connection? It's nothing to do with the widgets. It's nothing to do with the widgets.
Yeah.
And the point is they spent 20 years running a fucking widget company, but what they desire deeply and what they've got the capacity to do is to connect with humans at a level they never did. They just never imagined that there could be something different because they've boxed themselves into a story. I'm not about undermining the guy who owns a widget company who's doing $2 million a year, has a decent lifestyle, has his nice car, has kids, and so on and so forth. What I'm saying is, what if there's more? And I don't mean more stuff, but what if there's more for you in this earth? What if you're capable of, and you've got the capacity to really impact the world in a different way? And what they do is they start to become a philanthropist. They start writing checks and they start doing that, which again is wonderful. I don't mean to diminish that at all. But again, that's this, they're trying to act on some voice that's going on inside them going, hey, buddy, there's more. This is not it. There has to be more than widgets and how you do it. Are you willing to listen to that voice and at least honor it so you never have to regret? Honor it and then say, yeah, don't want to do it. But don't ignore the voice. Don't ignore the tapping because the universe will tap, then it'll tap louder, then it'll tap louder. And then sometimes then it just ignores you or sometimes it will whack you over the head with a sledgehammer, which is something like a wake-up call, depression, death, stress, regrets, whatever it happens to be. And I don't believe anybody should go through that.
Just to slightly change the tone here, like I want to talk about, because we've spoken about success, and I want to come back to the gifts that you speak about, because I think that's a huge thing. But I just want to talk about adversity and failure to counter that. So along the way, obviously, you just said regrets, but even if we are being more congruent, divorce happens, loss of jobs happen, people leave, and these kind of scenarios do happen. That's part of life. What is some skill sets and a mindset? I mean, you talk about mindset and soul set, and that's another question as well. But what is some kind of, how do we deal with adversity, or how do you deal with adversity?
I expect failure. Right. I actually expect it to happen. I mean, to walk around, people might think, well, that's a very negative thought process from a coach or a motivational speaker, or whatever people call me. I go, no, because it's going to happen regardless. I can control some of it, or I can influence some of it, and some of it's outside of my peripheral, if you like. So I kind of almost expect it. So when it hits me, it doesn't hit me as hard as it used to. So that's kind of one thing. And I know that goes against a lot of people's kind of thought processes and beliefs and maybe what they expect me to say. So kind of almost expect it to fail, but that doesn't mean you don't, kind of strive for, to win or to succeed, but expect.
Just to clarify that doesn't mean you're kind of half in the business or half in the
no,
or
absolutely
anything, nothing like that. You're kind of, well, she's going to leave me anyway, so I'm going to hedge my bets here.
Yeah, no, when I got down on one knee to ask my wife to marry me on a beach on the west coast of Ireland, I didn't have another girl down the other end of the beach in case my wife said no. It was all in. It was 100% in.
Right.
But what I've learned is that if you are just more open and not attached to a failure coming your way or what is perceived as failure, it takes the wind out of you. It just doesn't flatten you as much. So a lot of people get one box in the face, one box in the tummy, and they're out for 6 months, like emotionally, they just can't recover. Or they use that as an example to prove that their gift or their passion is not worth pursuing. You see, I tried it and it didn't work. So that's number one. Number two is, I find that this is the biggest thing for me. If you're, well, actually, there's alignment, like making sure that you're aligned to the thing that you're doing. A lot of people say, no, this is exactly what I want to do. And if I question them deep enough, you'll find a flaw in the foundation of it. So sometimes a little shift is required for you to really be on task. But the biggest thing that I have found, like the single biggest thing, is when your dreams, goals, aspirations, whatever you want to call them, are attached to a greater good, that they're not about you. They're actually designed to help other people move forward or help humanity better itself. There is no greater cause that will get you back off your feet when you're down and back in the game. Mm-hmm. My work is not about Philip McKernan. My work is about how many people can I impact, wake up, support, open up their possibilities, get them to dream bigger than they can ever dream, and really help them uncover who they are. My work is not about changing you. If you want to change, don't ever come to me, because I don't believe you need to change. What I need people to be open to the fact is maybe they need to open up and allow more of their voice out, more of their gift out, more of their joy out, more of who they are, their identity, and that voice that they've maybe squashed over a period of time. Taking a mask off is not putting somebody else's mask on you. It's taking it off. It's revealing more of you. That's what I do.
Yeah.
So to me, when that revealing, if you doing a podcast impacts 2 people, 2,000 or 200,000 people, when you have a bad day and you have a bad interview, or somebody says no to you, or you question its validity, or people don't sign up in iTunes, or whatever the benchmarks we sometimes use to prove that we are failing, you open the box, the email file of the kid who sent you the email, the 16-year-old, who goes, I heard my mom listening to this podcast. It's given me immense hope. I've suffered from depression. I get bullied at school. Thank you, Ian, for doing this. You've really given me hope. That's why you do it. There is no greater reason in the world to crawl yourself out of that darkness that all of us experience. And if people say they don't experience it, they're lying to you, and get back in the game and get back in the hot seat and say, fuck it, I'm doing this for other people as much. I'm way more than I'm doing it for myself. And when you can do that, externalize the impact, there is no greater force I have found to get back in the game and say, you know what, dust yourself down. Let's get back on and let's do it.
Beautiful. That's great. And I'm aware of the time, and I don't want to keep going off on a tangent here. So actually, I'll kind of, the last couple of questions, which let's just summarize. When you say gift, you say everybody has a gift that you are going to drag out, pull out, coerce out. And I know we've covered it quite a bit, but almost as a summary, you think everybody has a gift. What if someone says, I don't have a gift? And we're not talking about the talent here. We're not talking about, well, I should be good at painting or singing.
Yep.
Do you mean that, or do you mean what value you bring to the world?
It's the value you bring to the world. So the lawyer, just going back to the lawyer that's you know, who basically is working in law or whatever, and he wants to open a flower shop, or she wants to open the flower shop. The flower shop isn't the end goal. The flower shop represents something about creativity, about love, about spreading joy, about color, about something else. Yeah. You go deeper than the flower shop, there's something else there. So I have run an event called One Last Talk, you know, maybe once a year, a couple of times a year. And I put primarily people who've never spoken in their lives before on a stage for 15 minutes to give their one last talk, the last talk they'll ever give before they leave this earth. They're not necessarily dying, but they have to really go deep. And what's extraordinary is they start to really believe and see that they've got a gift for the first time in their lives. They come in thinking they want to tell a story about, you know, politics or global warming, but they have to share a part of their narrative. And they realize by sharing a part of their narrative that in most cases the world has never heard before, that they're going to be judged. The opposite happens. They share their story, two or three things happen. One is they free their story that has held them back in ways they can't imagine. Two is people respond to them by saying, oh my God, I'm not alone. Thank you for giving me the belief that I'm not, and that my story is okay. And three is that person gets inspired, the audience who listens to this, to believe that their story matters, and they get inspired to share theirs. So the person on the stage starts to see that their story has value. That is part of their gift. So your gift is something that's not, you could be a good salesperson, that's a talent, but your gift lies elsewhere. Your gift is more in an emotional, spiritual space. The talent is in an intellectual space. We all have gifts, absolutely. And for those of people, I know I heard your question, for those people who don't believe they have a gift, good for you. Cool. Good luck with that. I don't think it's cool at all. Great, right. Because it gives us more space for the people who believe they have a gift to experiment and play with that. Most of society don't believe they have a gift. I disagree. I'm not going to argue it. Good luck with that. But what if you're wrong?
Mm. And actually on that, you actually, a quote from your website is 90% of people die with regret. With regret, I work with the other 10%. So almost that, the 90% of the people who are still staying with the script of I don't have a gift, staying asleep, doing their busy work, and you're sharing your gift and message with the people who are looking for their gift.
Yeah,
Really
thank
good.
you for that, because that's a great people judged that quote when I put it on the front of our website, and really didn't like it. People reacted to it, but the people who are open to really doing the work, most people are not open to my work, and they're not open. They say things like, I'm very well known for making people cry. I'm very well known for frightening people. Some of the most successful people in the world. I don't make people cry. I'm not scary. They're scared of themselves. They're scared of how amazing they could be. And they're scared of how magic their life could be. That's what they're scared of. And if I create an environment where they cry, they've needed to cry.
Yeah.
They've needed to cry for fucking years.
Yeah.
I just the catalyst that does that. That's what I do.
Yeah. I fully believe that, and I feel that from you, that your message is very clear. So I can totally resonate with that, absolutely. And as someone who's cried a lot over the last 3 years, as I've done my own waking up, I can totally appreciate that. And Philip, thank you for sharing. Just very quickly, the final tips for people to not live with regret.
I think I just have one, and it's what it feels for a lot of people incomplete, but what they don't, they're too quick to judge this, and that is, I don't have a 3-step system to getting from a place of a path of perhaps heading towards regret, as opposed to going to a place that doesn't. Other than the fact that I believe the most courageous thing we can do. I mean, I have another quote at somewhere on my website. It's the path to an authentic life it starts with questioning the one you're currently on, or the one that you're already on. So people are often want to make a change, but they're not willing to stop and look at their current reality. So if someone lives in their head too much, which is an epidemic in the world today, and it's just such an unfortunate reality, because when you're living in your head, you're not present, you're not living, you're not alive to the extent you could be. But of course, when you're in your head, you don't know that. You don't know what you're missing. But when you connect emotionally, you get out of your head, connect more with your gut on a more consistent basis, the joy you'll feel, the connection you'll feel, the world just looks and feels different, and also the success you'll have in business. This is a business thing as well. So people say, well, how do I get out of my head? And I go, no, wrong question. Why are you in your head so much? So the awareness of why you're in here, this is about protecting yourself. You've been hurt. You don't want to feel. Get in touch with why you lock yourself in your head. And what you'll find is you'll start to transcend beyond your brain. We're asking too many of the wrong questions. How do I become more successful? Well, why aren't you successful? What are the patterns around money, around relationships, around sabotage? What are those things that are preventing you? Deal with them first, and what you'll find is the clarity of what you need to do next will start to show up. It becomes obvious. We're too busy looking for what's next to be successful, to be happier. What's going on today? What are the patterns? Because otherwise, you're going to bring something in and build it on top of a poor foundation. And what you'll do is you'll mess it up at some level. It'll come back to haunt you if you don't deal with what's going on in the core. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. And I can totally understand that, because I was thinking to myself the other day that life is on hold. We say life is on hold because, and what I mean by that is what you just said, is we're postponing other stuff to the future, that this success, what we're doing now, I'm not living now, because living is going to be in 10 years when I've done this, then that's when I'm going to live my life. We do that all the time. I'm doing that. I'm trying to not do that, but I'm aware of it. Postponing life, happiness and joy, and living it and getting out of your head, because we'll do that. I'll do that, when I can get the house, or when I can get the money. And so it's really highlighted it for me. And and you're absolutely right. Philip, I could talk to you for another hour. We haven't spoken about your documentaries or all of your other work, but thank you so much for giving me this time. Where can people find out more about you and get in contact?
Well, I'm going to give you 2 things. One is we did a documentary around the difference between a gift and a talent. It's called Give and Grow. So if your audience and your listeners want to go to giveandgrow.com/gift, GIFT, they can actually download the film for free. They don't even have to buy it. Okay. So that's something that I wanted to mention. And then other than that, just my main website, philipmckernan.com.
That's incredible. Thank you so much for that. And this has been amazing. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I really appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
Thank you. And everybody take a listen. It's going to be on iTunes. Please share it out, leave a review, and get the message out there. And thank you so much to Philip McKernan. Thank you.
Thank you.